Well, Donald Trump is now the President of the United States of America, along with his Vice President, J.D. Vance. What does this mean for the military? What does this mean for service members? I will tell you this. There has never been a time, more so than now, where I have been proud to serve this country. I've been in the United States Marine Corps for 14 years. And throughout that time, I have served under 3 presidents. And I am very optimistic about all the opportunities that are going to come, not only to service members, but also to Americans as a whole. The fact that our Vice President of the United States of America, himself, was an active duty United States Marine brings me a lot of pride as well. So, as we open this next chapter for our country, I encourage anybody who has been considering military service to take that leap, to go for it, to give it everything you got, to go find out what is available to you and what is available for you. Good luck to you.
What an excellent way to start a Friday morning with a member of our service. Of course, good morning. Happy Friday. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. So happy to see you guys this morning. Good morning to Allison, of course, and Rob and Ryan. I'll tell you what, I don't know about you guys. I am very happy it's a Friday. I need a Friday. Even though I work tomorrow just for like 4 hours or so, I am still very happy for a Friday because I'll tell you, it's been quite the week. I don't know what's going on. I've been having technical issues every single morning with something or another. And that, of course, carried into today, but we'll get it figured out. Just silly stuff. That's all. Nothing that's a big deal. Good morning, Joe. But I'm very happy it's a Friday. I'm sure you guys are as well. I just wish it were a little bit warmer out. About the ICE deportations. Lots of propaganda out there. The media is not helping anything. And sorry about that, Joe. Yes, the feed probably is freezing, and what that is right now is that is my I have 3 different internet services in the house, and I don't know why, but I can't seem to find one that, goes through the whole house. So I have one at this end, one in the middle, and one at the other end. And my laptop is trying to connect to the one in the middle, and I have no idea why. So I keep switching it back, but hopefully it's better now, and hopefully it will stay better. I chose the right one at the beginning of the show, but sometimes I don't know why it does that, but it does. But either way, no one's trying to censor me. It is just something going on with my internet service. But as I was saying when the screen was probably frozen, is that I am. Oh, good morning, Glesna. Good morning, Jay Van Brown and Tammy Jerry Hoover. I am and Sherry. Good morning to you also. Lots of things to talk about today. Again, I want to talk about so much of the misinformation is out there. I am seeing all of these rallies, people getting rallies together to go against ICE, to protest ICE. We're going to talk about that. I want to talk about the Elon Musk salute I know we already talked about it yesterday, but I want to talk about it again because there's still so much propaganda out there, especially in Germany. There's so much going on. It's crazy. I want to talk about, as you guys probably know, a lot of the world leaders meeting in Davos talking about the 2050 plan, their new agenda. Trump, of course, spoke there as well. I think he put the fear of God in most of those European leaders who, of course, are hell bent in destroying not only us, the United States, but all of Europe. And there was a lot that came out of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the planetary alignment because whether you think so or not, when the planets align, which they're set to do between tonight and tomorrow night, it does affect a lot of different things. Now, how far does that go? Is it like the full moon? Does it affect you and your body and your energy? Does it affect you, or does it just affect the weather? Because we certainly know that planetary alignment does affect the magnetic fields, it does affect our stratosphere, it does affect the tides and the winds and all types of weather events. So we're going to get into that. And Allison, yes, Trump's speech was brilliant to the World Economic Forum. I was going to play it, but then I thought, it's kind of long. I'm not going to do that. It's Friday. I'm going to talk a little bit about gardening. I want you guys to know where you should be right now. Or believe it or not, it's a countdown to the last day of frost, isn't it? It's a countdown to that last day. And some people wait till Mother's Day, but either way, I was going to do it on Mondays, but Mondays are too busy going over all the weekend news. We're going to talk about it and get into that, on Fridays, which things are a little bit easier on Fridays to talk about gardening and that type of thing. Usually Fridays are always a slower news day for some reason. And so we're going to talk about what you should be doing right now. We'll do that every Friday. I want to talk about the Nashville school shooting, and I'll just jump into that now before we get into everything else. Eventually, I'm going to make my way to the Trump's releasing the files, of course, on JFK, RFK, MLK. Interesting, all the three letters. And we're going to get into that because there's a lot of different things I'm hearing, and we'll see what happens. The files, people haven't really had a chance to look at the files. A couple people have, and so we'll get into that. But one of the things I wanted to jump into is the Nashville school shooter. And as you know, in Antioch, the other day, Tennessee, there was a shooting that took place. We kind of touched base on it yesterday, and it kind of comes full circle with Elon Musk and them talking about his salute, because there are what they call a Nazi salute, which was not a Nazi salute. There's a lot of photos out there of the school shooter who is taking that same stance. And of course, people want to say, oh, he was probably influenced by Elon Musk. And, oh, look at him. He's doing the same stance as Elon Musk did. They're all doing the Hitler wave. Well, it's not what the case was with Elon Musk. But the school shooter, it absolutely was. It's kind of, I'm not going to say false flag event. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go that far right now. But I will say that it's very convenient. All of this is very convenient in a very strange way. And I know there were 2 lives lost. So I don't want to over dramatize it or get too far down the rabbit hole. But I'll tell you what, this kid who is an African American kid, a black kid, and he was, how they call people an incel. It's supposed to be like a really angry man that hates women and hates the world and doesn't fit into society, blah, blah, blah. Well, this kid was a self-proclaimed incel. And what they're saying is that he was going into all of these different groups on social media. Now, first of all, why are there social media groups for these types of people who are known sometimes to be violent? And he was going into these groups, but because he was black, he wasn't accepted, because these groups, they say, are largely white supremacists. So now they're trying to say that this kid who is black was actually a white supremacist. Now, how you can be black and be a white supremacist, I don't really know. And apparently he had made statements. He left, I think it was a 23-page manifesto. And in that manifesto, he claimed that he was ashamed to be black, and that he was more interested in the white race, and that he really looked up to Hitler and everything that Hitler, wanted to do. and all of Hitler's objectives. And now why he chose, the particular two students he chose, I don't know. Was it random? I don't know. I shared the video on Telegram. I'm not going to share it, of course, on regular social media, but there is a kid that did videotape a part of the shooting in the school. This took place in the school cafeteria. And, it's just a crazy situation. And then, of course, they're plastering images all over social media of the school shooter doing this Hitler salute right next to Elon Musk, of course, doing the same thing. But what the difference is this kid was taking a photo, a selfie of himself, literally doing the Hitler salute. Now, Elon Musk, on the other hand, it was actually a video. I'm not going to play the video again. I played it the other day. You can find it on social media. And Elon Musk, what they conveniently, they just took a photo still from the video. And it just happened to be when his arm was extended. And he certainly was at, good morning, Dottie and Elizabeth and Robert. He absolutely was not doing a Hitler stance, a Hitler, salute. What he was doing is he was very thankful to the people who were applauding him. He was putting his hand on his heart and then throwing it out, and saying, you have my heart, is what he was doing. So when you see him extend his arm in that position, he's throwing his heart out to the people. It would be like, oh, I'm throwing my heart out to you, is what he was doing. But they so conveniently took a photo when his hand was extended. And now all of a sudden it has gone completely out of control, completely out of control. It is unbelievable. And Elizabeth, I've been looking. Oh, you've been looking for the podcast. You know, uh, Elizabeth, the best way to find the podcast is on my personal Facebook page or on X on my page, because every single morning on my own personal Facebook page or on my X page, it's on YouTube too, but that's, questionable. On some days they take me down. But every morning on my Facebook page is always a good place to find the show, or on X. Good morning, Kim and Jay. And let's see here. And Jay, you're right. You put that photo alongside multiple other celebrities striking the same pose. And I did. I put that on social media, and there are so many of them. And are they all taken out of context? I don't know, because I don't know the original video or photos of those people who were holding their arm up in that way. But I can tell you that if you watch the video of Elon Musk, he was absolutely not doing any type of salute. He absolutely was not. Robert says, isn't Elon Musk very, very good friends with Larry Ellison of Oracle? I have concerns regarding AI vax and their surveillance goals. China comes to mind. Complete control of the population. And Robert, you're referring to Stargate. Now, for one, I don't see Donald Trump being a big proponent of any type of AI vaccine. I think that's a lot of leftist propaganda they're throwing out there to make sure we don't want to support Donald Trump. Because when I do research on Stargate, nothing comes up about any type of AI vaccine. you know, all that comes up when I've done research is data centers. Donald Trump is wanting to install an iron dome to protect our country, to protect our natural interest. And they plan on using these AI databases as part of our defense, not only when it comes to the Iron Dome, but when it comes to other types of threats. And of course, you cannot go around AI, because if we do, I'm not a fan of AI either. I don't see any kind of AI vaccine happening, quite honestly. And that's why I haven't even brought it up, because I think it's just a bunch of ridiculous propaganda. But I will tell you that I do think that we have no choice but to do AI. I don't if I had an option, I would say no to AI, but we don't have an option because other countries are using it. BRICS, you guys know I talk about BRICS a lot, and BRICS is a very powerful entity, and they're growing stronger every day. And I'll tell you what, they're using a lot of AI. Robert says you watched Larry Ellison video on Oracle shareholders saying exactly that. Robert, I'll have to go back and look. I know a little bit about Larry Ellison of Oracle, but Larry Ellison, just because they're using Oracle doesn't necessarily mean that Larry Ellison is going to be all that involved, or that the shareholders have much of a decision. I'll go back and look at that a little bit further. But I didn't see anything from Donald Trump talking about any type of vaccine. And I don't think Donald Trump would want any type of AI vaccine. I don't see that happening. So, in the true sense of a vaccine. But I will go back and look. Oracle's a good platform. It's one of the original platforms. Larry Ellison became a very wealthy man because of using Oracle. He's actually the neighbor of a friend of mine, believe it or not, out in California, and probably was very close to losing his home. It didn't the fire didn't go quite that far down, that far north in Malibu. Otherwise, Larry Ellison would have lost that home. He probably has many homes, but I don't know. I don't see Larry Ellison as being a bad guy, quite honestly. But I'm going to look into it further, and we'll see. And Robert says AI is fine. It is how it is used. That is correct. That is correct. And Tara says she thinks Ellison and Altman are very wacky lefties. I'm hoping there's more to Trump investing there. We need to be in control of AI. However, we absolutely have to be in control of AI. And let's see here. Joe says, you've been very super impressed with everything he's saying and doing this time around. And, all we can do is pay attention, research. I'm going to do more research over the weekend into this AI vaccine. I've been very dismissive of it because I don't see Donald Trump ever being any part of that, or Elon Musk. But I will say, Donald Trump, I don't think he's an anti-vaxxer. I don't think that. I think that if he thinks it's a good vaccine and that it's going to be good for people, I don't see him making a mandatory vaccine, but I do see him potentially, just like he did, with COVID. He told people, go get the vaccine. There's a lot of people who have not forgiven Trump for telling people to get vaccinated. And so that's something to keep in mind also. Mary says it was about targeted vaccines regarding cancer. Yeah, there is a new vaccine coming out about cancer. Russia already has it, and they've already started trials and they're releasing it to the public, and we'll probably follow suit. We've always known that the CURE has always been there, but the pharmaceutical companies would rather us be sick, right? We're going to talk later on. I'm going to show you a little video about Apeel, by the way, talking about they want us to be sick and what Apeel is and how it's in our food. And let's see, Alice says AI medical research could be groundbreaking. Just need built-in proper controls and all. Just remember, artificial intelligence. It is what we put into it. If I had my little artificial intelligence cube right here, it would only know what I feed into it, and that's it. It doesn't gain knowledge in any other way. It is all what you put into it. So think about that too. We have to. The scary part is that AI. A lot of the wrong people have been programming AI, and there's a lot of people who do program AI. And I think a threat that we face when it comes to AI is that, particularly an international threat, is we know that AI can communicate with other AI. Are we going to face situations where we have our adversaries with these different types of artificial intelligence weapons, high-tech weapons, or high-tech surveillance that find a way to talk to our AI that contains our national security information, and then they share information? Another form of hacking. That's kind of my fear with AI. And Joe, a friend of yours, is sending you a video of the San Diego on fire. Joe, Colonel Adams, there are a lot of new fires, in California right now. That one is on the far southern border. Last I looked, it was about 600 acres. It's probably a lot more than that now. And, Colonel Adams, I do believe, it's just my personal opinion, I think that all of these fires are arson. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if it weren't people like Antifa, or, people say, oh, it's a homeless person or it's an illegal. It's still domestic terrorism. Either way, you start a fire, that's domestic terrorism. And there's quite a few fires going on. One up closer to Los Angeles as well. It's crazy, and I don't think we've seen the end of these fires. Jay says, until AI is able to think for itself, its only threat is with the programmers. Now, Jay, that's an interesting, comment you made, because AI is able to think for itself within those parameters. So if I have my little AI cube here and I've programmed a bunch of information in there, the AI absolutely thinks for itself within those parameters, within the information it knows, unless somehow it is spoken to, I'm not sure how else to phrase that, unless it is communicating with another AI. Well, then guess what? It's very possible that your little AI cube could absorb the information from another AI entity. I've talked before about Russian technology, and they have these drones that absolutely, not only do they talk to each other, these AI drones, but they formulate plans. You don't have to have a man, or not a man, but manpower operating these Dranium drones. You give it a command, it sets out to complete its objective. And if first their drone swarms, and if for some reason it's not able to complete its objective as it was told to do, well, these drones talk to each other and they come up with their own plan to hit the target. That's very serious, high tech AI power. And we have to keep up with it. We have to keep up with it. And I haven't heard too much about this, and I don't know. Good morning, Nancy. Good morning, Joe, the guitar guy. I don't know if this is part of Stargate or something different, but I do know that they are working on a new super satellite. And the super satellite is AI powered. And from what I understand, it's going to have this. I mean, we think satellites now have a really good system as far as being able to see. I mean, if there was a satellite above me, and well, there is a satellite above me. There's satellites everywhere. As a matter of fact, I have no idea how they fly in and out of space with all these satellites up there circulating around. But you've seen those videos where they can see in the blinds of your home. Well, they allegedly have a new satellite system they're working on here. It's our technology where it can go so much further than that. It's pretty interesting in how these satellites now, they can hear you, they can see you, and we are going to have, something revolutionary. Elon Musk is already working on us. If you have a cell phone, if you particularly, I have an iPhone, and I have the capability of hooking up to a satellite, which is pretty wild. If I'm lost, I'm out in the woods, and I don't have a cell phone signal, and I have an emergency, I can hook up to a satellite and make an emergency call. It's like you take the good and the bad. Are they capable of spying on us a lot more? Yes. If you're standing out in your front yard and you have your cell phone open, they can look down and see exactly what's on your cell phone. If you're driving in your car and you're talking on your phone, they can hear what you're saying. It is crazy in the way of surveillance, but at the same time, it has its good parts too. It also means more tuning in to crime or missing people, or satellites are, they're obviously rotating around the earth. They don't always have an image of everything, because I know, some of I write a crime blog. I haven't written lately because I've been just too darn busy, but one of the first things that people do, let's say whether you're a crime sleuther or whether you're some types of investigators, is when someone goes missing, or there's a very serious crime that has occurred, they pull the satellite feeds, because at any given time there are satellites traveling all around the world, and you can go into these satellite feeds and you can try to see if one of these satellites picked up an image from that day or that moment, of time. And it's not easy to do. You as a person can go into the Teradata servers, and you can actually do this yourself. And I know plenty of people who do, when they start talking about crime cases, and they'll look and they say, okay, was the victim's car in their driveway that day? The problem is the satellites are not always above your house. Or, they might be on the other side of the earth when this particular crime occurred. But this new super satellites, it's going to be a little bit of a different story. I think they're going to know where we're at and what we're doing all the time, all the time. Robert, you said it's all connected, and are you meaning to Stargate? We're reaching a pace of revolutionary technology, and to me, it's a little bit scary. You have to take the good and the bad. If you're not committing crimes and you're not doing anything you shouldn't do, I would normally say don't worry, but that's not necessarily the case because it depends on who is controlling the technology. Under Donald Trump, I feel perfectly safe. Under Democrat control or a foreign adversary, not as much. However, I fear our own government with this type of technology more than I do China or Russia or anyone else because it is our own government that I fear. And what I worry about is the slippery slope. That think about the technology we have right now. Unfortunately, so many people have given their DNA to these different DNA sites like Ancestry and 23andMe and GED Match. And we know that law enforcement can absolutely take a piece of DNA from a crime scene, track it down, and this is good technology if it's used in the right way. And they can make a family tree out of that DNA from the crime scene. And through the process of elimination, they can figure out who that DNA belongs to. They've caught, at this point, I remember when this technology first came out and they've had their first 100 cases they were trying to solve. They've far, far surpassed that. And now we're to the point where you know it's hard to commit a crime right now and get away with it unless it was perpetrated by the government and they want you to get away with it. As an example, the bomber from January 6th, right? Well, we have no idea who that person is, but we can recognize everyone else by their eyelashes, right? And Joe Fry says, can they zoom in on your license plate? Yes. Yes, they can, but they can do that anyway. This new technology will be much more, uh, much more intricate than that. And Robert says, Representative William Timmons says, pardoned J6 Select Committee members should expect a subpoena soon. Buckle up because we're going to get to the bottom of this nonsense. Select Committee for January 6th. There's a reason that everybody on that committee was pardoned. It's because they were not telling the truth. Government doesn't tell us the truth about anything. And then Robert says, Ancestry 23andMe looking for seed lines of Seth. Now, Robert, you've lost me there. I don't know what you mean by Seth. Unless you're talking about Seth, I can't remember his last name, that was killed, which we all have always blamed on the Clintons. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, but I will say that we're living in a scary time when it comes to technology, because let's just say, of course, there's the good and let's say the bad. So let's say that there is a false flag type of event that the government is planning, and they want to make sure you are the person that is found guilty. Well, it wouldn't be very difficult to say, oh, we have your DNA at the scene, because guess what? Your DNA, somebody in your family, it doesn't even have to be your immediate family. It can be some cousin 6 times removed or whatever who sent in their DNA to one of these sites, and they're going to find you, and they'll have enough reasonable assumption that that's your DNA. And of course, we know they can do anything they want with AI. So I think there's going to be cases that come up now, maybe not anytime soon, but where we're really going to wonder, back, speaking of, Trump releasing the files on JFK, RFK, MLK. Think about this. If these types of crimes happen today, would you trust the government at all? Back then things were different. We didn't have DNA. We didn't have, all of the different types of technology to solve crime as we do now. And back then, if they found DNA at a scene, if they found DNA on a gun or fingerprints or so on, then you're going to reasonably assume that that is correct and that's what they found and that is the guilty party. It's a whole different story now when they can they can invent. First of all, you probably know this. You don't have to actually truly use your thumbprint to commit a crime. I mean, your thumbprint, even though they're all different, it can be digitally created. Because guess what? Now, I've not done this. I don't know about you guys, but guess what? If you've used a laptop or a computer, my laptop now, if I put my thumb on it, I could create a passcode with my thumbprint. A lot of people have door locks where you put your thumbprint up to get in. A lot of companies use a thumbprint. Well, so guess what? The government has your thumbprint. Okay. A lot of times the government has your fingerprints. And now you can digitally recreate that with, guess what? Different types of AI software. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to trust situations. So, as a perfect example, let's say, God forbid, Donald Trump is assassinated, and it much in the way of, let's say, JFK, RFK, MLK. And we're looking, okay, well, who did this? Who did this? He was alone in his office. Who got into the White House? Well, they could show video of Robert here, oh, Robert's, look at all the stuff he posts online. He's, some crazy conspiracist right winger. And look at this video of Robert parking his car in Washington, D.C. near the White House. Look at Robert, going up and entering into the White House. We know that's him because look, we see his face. And why we see his face? Because Robert has a driver's license. And if you have a driver's license, that means that your image is in the system. When you go and get your driver's license, it immediately enters your face into the facial recognition system, and which of course we know can be used for a lot of different purposes. So it's Robert, right, breaking into the White House because we see his face. And gee, that's Robert's fingerprint. We got his thumbprint right there on the doorknob, so we know that Robert opened this door. And then there's Donald Trump, laying there on the ground, and we recovered a weapon, or maybe we recovered an ID. And oh, that's Robert's ID. Oh, we got Robert's fingerprints on the weapon. We see his DNA is here. I think you get the picture, right? It's like, how will we ever trust anything? How will we ever trust anything in a world of AI and deep fakes and facial recognition and sensors that can, pick up your thumbprint and fingerprints and all of these other things? So I think you get the drift of where I'm going with this. It's a good time, but it's a scary time. We just have to hope and pray that our government doesn't use it against us. And under Donald Trump, that's not going to happen. Will it happen eventually? Donald Trump won't be our president anymore. Who's going to take his place? And when that person takes his place, are they going to use it against us? Robert says, I'm already on several lists. I bet you are, which is exactly why I used your name. And Mary says, did Robert climb the wall at Mar-a-Lago? I have a feeling that Robert's everywhere. And Robert says, with AI, new Google chip is expected to crack the digital codes of Bitcoin in a couple years. You will have your wallet back. Robert, I hope so. I really do hope so. Because I am, a Bitcoin millionaire without access to my Bitcoin. So that would be really nice. And hopefully Bitcoin won't crash between now and then. It'll continue to grow and be worth more money, because I would really like to. I actually could probably figure out how to get to my Bitcoin if I could just figure out what wallet I put it in. Because back then there weren't that many wallets around. Story for another day. But that's something I wanted to get to. So, talking about AI and new technology, and the golden age is going to be a lot about technology. We're going to explore a lot of new technology, and that's going to be a lot of different things, from these super satellites to the Iron Dome. I don't know what they're going to call it. The Dome of Freedom. I have no idea. And but there will be a name for it, and we need that extra protection. Now, of course, whoever takes over after Trump, if it's not a conservative, they're probably going to get rid of all these safety measures we put in place. But right now, there really is no reason for everything to take place the way it does. Colonel Joe Adams from the Washington Guard, if you guys recall, we were talking the other day about border security. And I thought about this last night. I'm like, Colonel Adams, of course, is extremely right. There are sections of the southern border that people come across where we just cannot, there's nothing we can do. There's difficult terrain, in some areas, and we don't have enough manpower. And, by the way, Donald Trump is sending 500 active duty Marines to the southern border, thankfully, thanks to the Marines, of course, for helping us out on every occasion. And like Colonel Adams said, you would have to have a manpower, somebody standing, every so many feet across the southern border to stop these illegal entries. And we can't do that. We don't have the manpower for that. And if we did, we should be using the manpower for something else. But I was thinking about this. In the world of technology, there's a lot of things that can potentially keep our borders safe. We have the use of laser security systems, that type of thing. What about if we put in some kind of a system that was like a direct energy weapon? How about that? Wherein we wouldn't even need a physical border wall. What if we had some type of a laser system? You guys probably think I'm crazy, but some type of a laser system where, every so many feet along the border, you have these directed weapons, or maybe it's operated by a satellite that constantly zooms back and forth, something like you'd see on Star Wars. And if anybody tries to cross the border, they're going to get zapped. Now, a lot of people will tell me that's not nice, and that's going too far. But is it going too far? How willing are we to secure our southern border? And speaking of, Allison said an electric laser fence. That's right, Allison, exactly like that, but from satellites. Exactly like that. And Robert says AI will be the single largest reason for future human brain drain. Do we need to learn anything? Reasoning, feel sorry for the kiddos. Prison planet, yes. And with that, I guess, again, good and bad with the AI, good and bad. And there's a class action lawsuit out there, by the way, right now for people who either have children who are addicted to video games, or if you yourself are addicted to video games. And we're going to see a lot more of that. And Joe says, like the lasers they used in the LA wildfires, exactly like that. And Mary says, I think he's going to North Carolina today. He could be. Mary, he's already been in North Carolina. It's kind of interesting on a side note that here we, under the Biden administration, what did that happen in September? Was it September 27th that Hurricane Helene came through and all that damage occurred? And nothing's been done. People have been living in tents, in sheds, in sleeping bags, no shelter, families with children sleeping out in the snow. That's a reality. And Trump visits North Carolina, and guess what? Within 24 hours, all of these people who are sleeping in their front yards, in tents or sheds or in sleeping bags, they're all in fully furnished apartments. That's all it took. So don't tell me the Biden administration couldn't do that. They chose not to do it. They chose not to do it. Now, Donald Trump, I know he visited California. He's not going to provide any aid to California until they open up the flow of water from the north to the south. He's not going to touch that quite yet till Governor Newsom steps in and does some work himself. He is going to visit Lahaina as well. I don't think he's visited Lahaina yet. And it could be possible that he's going back to North Carolina, but he has already worked miracles in North Carolina. But I want to go back to the deportations, because people just don't get it. They don't get it. They don't get it. I'm really wondering, do people even look at the news or seek out the truth at all? I'm going to say no. And I hate to say this, because now none of you, that listen to this show, but I have seen friends of mine who are conservatives, good patriotic conservatives, posting on social media that, oh, this is atrocious. We shouldn't be deporting these people. What are we going to do now? We're going to be in big trouble. We're not going to have any food to eat. All these other things. And I'm thinking, okay, that's not how it works. For one, oh, and by the way, I'm in the general St. Louis area, as a lot of you are. A lot of these, there's a lot of people are calling for protests and rallies in the city of St. Louis to protest ICE and ICE deporting these people. And, I'm driving myself crazy going on to these posts saying, do you seriously know what you're talking about? And the answer, of course, is no, because right now, guess what? ICE is only deporting the most violent criminals. Please tell everyone you know this. They're only deporting the most violent criminals. And so, therefore, if you see an ICE raid on your block, you should be pretty darn thankful. If there are ICE raids taking place in your town, you should be praising Jesus right now, not planning a rally. Because the only people ICE is deporting right now, right now is the big key word, but right now, that's going to be people who have murdered other people. Killers, people who kill people, rapists, people who rape people, pedophiles, people who have been caught with child pornography or have been accused or convicted of assaulting children. Well, I should say convicted of, not accused. And then we have the gang members like MS-13. They're in the Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua. These are the people who are being deported right now. Those people. They're talking, oh, they're going to schools, they're going to churches. They're looking for violent offenders. That's what they're doing. They're looking for violent offenders. If you see ICE at your school, then you better be really worried why a violent offender is in your school. and or the families of these violent offenders. It is absolutely insane to me that people don't understand it. Even, if you're in the St. Louis area, there's I can't remember the exact name, Real Talk St. Louis, something like that, or New Real News. It's an online news forum, and they post a lot of really good stuff. And I admire a lot of their journalism and the work that they do. However, they are part of this. Oh, we feel so bad for these people getting deported. Well, you wouldn't feel so bad when they don't get deported and they kill your child or they rape your mother. You wouldn't feel so bad then, would you? And the people that are being deported right now, these are the most violent criminals in the country. And it's really sad to say that on day one, these ICE and the FBI and the all of these different agencies that are working together, these multi-jurisdictional agencies, multi-agency task forces, they know where these people are. So that means they knew where these people were when Biden was in charge of things, right? They've always known where these violent criminals were. They chose not to arrest them. They chose not to deport them. And now they're finally doing the right thing. They're finally doing the right thing. And Jay says they will deport anyone collected in a raid who is also illegal, even though they aren't actively looking for them. Well, that's true. If you, let's say, if you're in a home and your brother is a violent sex offender and they come into your home and the rest of you are all illegal, everybody's got to go. That's true. But they are not going out and looking for random people to deport. That's just not happening. They are looking for violent offenders. People should be thrilled to death that we are getting these violent offenders out of our country. And Tara says, Real STL News, thank you for that. I couldn't remember their name. And VOP News are both loaded with low information voters. And you're right, Tara. And I looked at the posts for both of them, and both of them are like, oh, yeah, we need to support these rallies. We need, and what's even crazier is they're saying we need to support these rallies because we love our Mexican friends. Okay, this has absolutely nothing to do with Mexico. Quite honestly, only a small portion of people that are being deported for violent crimes are from the country of Mexico. And when we get down the line and we're deporting other groups of people, again, only a portion from Mexico. Most of these people are from Venezuela, Sudan. They're from, Central America, down in El Salvador and Guatemala and different parts of, of course, of Africa. They're coming from Middle Eastern countries. It's people all over the world. It has nothing to do with the Mexican people. It has nothing to do with Hispanics. It has to do with people who are here in our country illegally who are committing crimes. That's what this is about right now. Linda says, I overslept after waking up. Linda, I almost overslept yesterday, so I get it. Did President Trump sign something to raise prescription drug prices? My insurance agent said the Democrats had brought them down. Well, first of all, Trump is the one who brought prescription prices down. Democrats took credit for it. I have not heard anything at all about prescription prices going up, but I will look into that. And let's see here. Robert says, same if a car accident where the innocent, he didn't pass an alcohol test. Also true. And Linda says Peggy posted that ICE is everywhere. They're in every town right now. Believe it or not, they're wherever you live. I can guarantee you, ICE is in your town because that's how many illegal, violent offenders there are. I'm hearing it all over. People said, oh, they were in Granite City yesterday. They were in St. Louis yesterday. They were in Belleville. They were in Edwardsville. They were in all these different cities around the St. Louis area. Yes, they're all over the place. They were down on Cherokee Street in St. Louis. They were downtown St. Louis. They are everywhere. Because why? Because Trump declared a national emergency on our southern border. And these people have to go. And we should be thanking the Lord that Donald Trump is focusing on the most violent offenders instead of rallying to keep them here. So when you see somebody saying, oh, these poor people, I feel so bad, they're being deported. Look at those guys, all lined up and they have to leave this country. No. Those people are violent offenders. They have raped or murdered, or were involved in child pornography or are a gang member. So don't feel sorry for these people. And then, now down the line, there's going to be other people. It's going to take a long time for them to round up all of the violent offenders. That's going to take some time. Now, after that, we don't know what Trump's next move is. I'm assuming that it may be parallel. He's also trying to target people who have overstayed their visas, overstayed their, truly documented reasons to be here. And there's a lot of them. Like I said yesterday, India is going to take back the 18,000 Indians that are here in our country that have overstayed, their visas or are here otherwise illegally. A lot of people are self-deporting, and I don't know that they need to self-deport. I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, I'm at the airport. I'm really upset. I'm self-deporting because I know Donald Trump's coming for me." Well, not yet. If you want to self-deport, go right ahead. But and Donald Trump has already said, when people are deported, if they are people who are legitimately seeking asylum, they can apply to seek asylum, and then we will find a way to get them through the system, and they will be welcomed back into the United States. And we don't yet know who the next group is that's going to be deported. But you know what? Be happy that he's tackling the violent criminals first. And let's see here. Trying to see if I've missed anything. And good morning, Mandy. DJT signed executive orders yesterday to release all the JFK MLK files. Yes, and I'm going to talk about that here in just a couple of minutes. And good morning, Pam. Also, I am gonna get to that, but before I do, I wanted to show you a video of something that's taking place on our. I think I uploaded this today on our southern border. Is Mexico? Speaking of Mexico, Mexico is getting a facility ready now. This is only for people who were Mexican citizens who are in our country now. And so they are getting a facility ready. I don't think this facility has anything to do with the remain in Mexico policy, although I do believe some of those people are going to be held there as well as they await their legal asylum claim into the United States. So right now we're not even taking asylum claims. Our southern border is closed. It is closed. No one's coming in through a legal port of entry or otherwise, unless you are already a citizen of the United States.
This is a place where the Mexican government is setting up one of the 25 temporary shelters along the U.S.-Mexico border to receive exclusively Mexican deportees. This place, just across the border, friends, with El Paso, Texas, would be able to take in up to 2,000 migrants. They would receive food and medical services in this shelter. And right now, there are 50 people working around the clock to put together this camp in the next 5 days. But it's uncertain if this place would be able to protect the migrants from the harsh freezing temperatures at night.
Yeah, so already hard at work, processes underway. It's happening. It is happening. Donald Trump, he stayed true to his word. He said he would start deportations on day one, and that's happening. Now, my question for you is that right now, again, these are violent criminals that are being deported from our country. Now, I'm curious what you guys think about this, because we know that, and I think it's starting in August. I can't remember exactly what month it begins, but eventually our government is going to start offering a $1,000 reward where if you provide information to ICE or some other government entity about the location of somebody who's here in our country illegally, and this person is captured and deported, you get $1,000 reward. That doesn't start yet. I thought somebody told me August, but I'm not sure. And you guys have probably already seen some of the little flyers floating around that say, it's kind of if you see something, say something, but it tells you that if you know where illegals are, to call this number, or go on this, online thing and provide information of where they are. And is that going too far? I'm kind of curious what you guys think. Is that going too far? I have mixed thoughts on that. I'm kind of 50-50 on that, because part of me feels like, well, that's what happened during the Holocaust when neighbors were told to tell on other neighbors. But that was different. That was religious persecution. Whereas these people literally are here because they committed a criminal act. And yes, simply stepping across our border without being an American citizen, without legal asylum, is a criminal act. So, I know there's two sides to that. And I don't know how I feel about turning in, people or people in your community, or people that work at your favorite restaurant and so on. I don't know how I feel about that. I've been thinking about it quite a bit. I don't personally know where anyone is outside of Chimichangas in St. Peters, Missouri. If you guys want to make $1,000 on that one, few $1,000s, and that's the situation I keep bringing up in my mind, is if I'm okay with this situation, because there was a time, this was back when Eric Greitens was trying to win his congressional seat against Eric Schmidt. And so I was helping with the fundraiser. Helped plan a fundraiser for Eric Greitens in St. Peters. And you know where that Chimichangas is? Well, some of us went in there, after the fundraiser. Of course, we're all excited because we just had this really successful event for Eric Greitens. We're all just thrilled to death over it. And we're all talking about Trump and all this different stuff. And, the manager came over to the table and asked us to stop talking about it. And then a girl came by, a waitress, and she was like hitting her hand into her fist like this, looking at us. And I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? And then all of a sudden, they just would not wait on us anymore. And so the manager was very nice. And, we asked the manager, like, what exactly is going on? Why is everyone angry with us? He's like, well, because they were trying to tell us we needed to leave. And it turns out that they hire a large number of illegals to work at this Chimichangas restaurant. And he said, well, they're all upset because you guys are talking about Donald Trump and they're here illegally. And they're very upset because they don't want to be deported. I'm like, okay, this was the strangest situation ever. And I'm thinking, these people were so rude to us. They were so rude to us. And they kicked us out. We were just having a good time. We in the United States, if we want to talk about Donald Trump and we're in a Mexican restaurant, we should be able to talk about Donald Trump. They should all mind their own business, because quite honestly, we weren't being loud. We weren't, disrupting anyone at that point. We got a little angry towards the end. And so when I think about that, I think, in that type of situation, I would love to have those people deported. They're not here for our better interest. Yes, they're working, they're being productive citizens. Of course they are. But at the same time, they hate us. Some of these people absolutely hate us. And they hate everything we stand for. They hate our values. And a lot of it is propaganda, because, of course, Democrats propagandize them into hating us. Whereas I think if we all sat down at the table, we'd have a lot more in common than what they think. But that was a really crazy situation. And I'm really shocked the manager told us why they didn't like us. Now, the manager was great, even though he kicked us out. The people were pretty bad. And it's just a shame. And I don't know, though, if it's going too far. And you guys aren't really saying too much, but Jay says, not a fan of this idea. Will create a backlog of reporting, and likely even those who are legal will be reported just because of their ethnicity. Jay, I never even thought about that, but that's probably true, because you will have a situation where people will see somebody that looks like they could potentially be illegal, and maybe they're actually citizens. And so people just start reporting random people because they have darker skin, or because they speak a different language, or because they're affiliated with certain businesses. I could see that happening. I could see that, causing a problem. Now, as of right now, this program is active. They're just not giving you the reward yet, but that's coming. Mary says, although I believe in a legal system of immigration, people on the wrong side of the dollar can be motivated to turn people in. Yes. And, I have a hard time with turning people in, whether I know them or not. I feel like it's the government's job. If they're here illegally, you should know where they are, or have an idea where these people are, and come and get them. But at the same time, if these people are violent, if they shouldn't be here, I would have no problem turning them in. So, that's we're not there yet, though, in the process of things. Right now, the ICE is taking names and taking numbers. So if you do report people, they're taking that information down. And when we come to the next round of deportation is when some of that will go, into effect. Right now, the most violent criminals. And I'm going to have to take some time, to think about how I feel about calling in tips and reporting people in your community, or people except for the people at Chimichangas. Don't care what happens to them. And so, we'll see how that plays out. Now, I want to go into talking about the Trump's declassification of the MLK files, the JFK, the RFK. I'm going to get all these letters mixed up eventually. And I want to make sure. Oh, Jay says it reminds me of the report your neighbors for COVID violations. Yes. Oh, and before I move on, I want to say one last thing about these deportations. Liberals are losing their minds about ICE going into schools, going into hospitals. Well, guess what? Going into churches. And I want to remind everyone that when you hear these arguments, let's remind ourselves what happened during COVID. They sure didn't have a problem going into churches, going into schools, and going into hospitals, did they? The liberals were all for shutting down our churches, going in and arresting pastors. Remember that? Arresting churchgoers, Christians, because, or other religions, because they attended church during COVID times. They had no problem going into hospitals and arresting family members that insisted on seeing their family members that were dying alone in the ICU, or people who went to nursing homes to see their family members who were dying or isolated alone in the nursing home, or the schools, parents who went to school board meetings and fought mandates. They didn't have any problem going into schools to arrest those people. So if anyone brings that up, oh, they're going into churches, they're going into schools, they're going into all these different places. Yes, you guys started that. You guys started it. So you set the precedent on going into these places. Mary says, believe it or not, prior to Biden's extreme moves, I believe there were good, hardworking illegals. There still are, good, hardworking illegals. There still are. And Mary says, I still get irritated at old license plates. I saw one from 2023 recently. And, and Mary, I get that. Although, the truck I have in my driveway has a license plate from 2021 because that's when my son's father died. And we have not been able to get his license plate. My son owns the truck, but the state will not renew the license plate. So we've been kind of struggling with that. So you might see us driving around with a truck with 2021 license plates very rarely, but once in a while. And, something I want to throw out there is that when Mary, back to your point about working, legally in our country, there are a lot of people who are here in our country illegally working. But I want to go back to the farm situation because another thing, and I will eventually move on to another topic. I want to go back to the farm situation because another thing I'm seeing people say is, oh, we're going to be in a lot of trouble because now we're going to have food rotting in the fields. We're not going to we're going to have food shortages. We're going to face a famine because we don't have all these illegals working on the farms. Well, I'm going to tell you that things have changed a lot. Talking about technology, a lot of these farms, if you go out and talk to a farmer, well, guess what? They've paid millions of dollars for AI operated farm equipment. They no longer need, a lot of farms no longer need people to work the farms, to, work with the harvest. They have machines that do that now. And the farmer doesn't, I live out in a rural area, I see farm equipment all the time. And you will often see that there are tractors and other equipment moving through the fields. There's no one in there. It's operating on auto. They go in, they press a button, they can control it from inside their home, and there's nothing they need to do. The machines do all the work. And then farmers will say, well, on some crops where they still don't have machinery that can handle it, they will hire migrants. But these migrants are groups of migrants. They hire them legally out of, whichever country. They come over here as a group with a work permit. They go out into the fields. They do the work. They get paid a good wage, not low wages. They get paid a good wage. And then they leave and they go back home. So things are not like they used to be where all of the farmers and farms, depended on illegal migrant workers. And quite honestly, I'm against it anyway, because you know what? A lot of farmers used to hire these people to come in and, slave away all day long in the field and, pay them just a couple of dollars. It's, $1 or $2 an hour, and that's wrong. Sometimes less than that. So that is also wrong. And let's see here. Tammy says that's incorrect. Still need people for farming. Tammy, not everybody. I've talked to several different farmers. I live in a rural area and we are surrounded by farms. And the farmers out here that I've talked to tell me that they don't need people anymore in their farms. Now, I'm not saying all farms, but a lot of farms now have equipment and they have, They have different types of, I'm not a farmer. I don't know the first thing about farming, but I was just talking to somebody, one who was a strawberry farmer, one who was a pumpkin farmer, and then one who's just general farmer. He does a lot of soybeans and different things like that. And I know another guy in Missouri that does green beans. They don't use people at all for their harvest. Now, I'm not saying that other people don't, but the people I've talked to do not. It's all automated. They have machines that do it all. These machines come through, they swoop up. They have these claws that swoop up the strawberries off the plants. And I don't know how they do the pumpkins. It's something that kind of rolls. I saw a picture of it. And then the soybeans are kind of the same way. It's a thing that kind of swoops up and grabs them all. And I'm not saying that no one uses them, but not like they used to. And Tammy says, sorry, had to comment in the farming situation. They need people, not illegals, but they need people. The equipment is not in the fields by themselves. Well, Tammy, maybe and I'm not disputing what you're saying, and maybe in your family's fields it's not, but I can tell you where I live, there are farmers here, and I see them all the time. I see their farm equipment moving through the fields, and there's no one in there. They set it on auto. Now they're paying millions of dollars for this farming equipment, but they're not operating it from inside the farming equipment. And, maybe not every farmer has, of course, this equipment yet, but it's out there. It is out there. And a lot of changes. I'll have to go back and play a video because I got one of these guys on video talking about his farm and the equipment that he uses and how he doesn't use migrants or anyone else. But yes, we still need people to work the farms. And it's unfortunate that a lot of Americans don't want to do these types of jobs. I hope that people step up and do go out and do what they can to help the farmers in any way that they can. But we shouldn't be counting on illegals to do the work anyway. We shouldn't be counting on them to do the work regardless. And let's see here. Jay says, no hand-picked crops in Illinois usually. Yeah, that is the case where I live, Jay, in Illinois. There probably are hand-picked crops, but I just don't know anyone picking crops by hand. Let's see. Pam says, lots if the lawn care companies use the programs, I forgot the name, or they bring people in from Mexico temporarily. I don't have any issue with people bringing people in temporarily with work permits. And Alan says they can get workers through work permits. So yeah, the farmers that I talk to, and again, there's the bazillion farmers across the country. And I'm not disagreeing with what Tammy said, because obviously she knows what her family does. And I 100% back her statement, that I don't know all the farmers. There probably are farmers out there who definitely do still need people. And I do hope that people step up to the plate and get out there and do what they need to do to make sure that these farmers are successful, because our food supply desperately depends on them. They desperately depend on them. Tammy says, my in-laws do have that, but they don't leave it in the fields by itself. But I agree. The human aspect is probably not as much as it was in the past. And Tammy, I would love to talk to you about that more, because I'm not a farmer. I live by farms. I don't really know everything that's going on, but I like to know, and I would certainly like to know more, especially when I'm going to be talking so much about gardening. And man, we have to support our farmers with everything we have. We really do, whether that means volunteering or accepting a job at a farm, whatever it is you need to do. It's kind of funny. I woke up this morning thinking about farmers markets, because it's about that time. And before the show ends, we're going to talk a little bit more about your gardening at home. Lots more to talk to about that. Good morning, Scott. And Joe says, don't pay enough for Americans to pick produce. Illegals will work for dirt cheap. That should be illegal. It should be illegal. We shouldn't. If you're going to have somebody work at your farm, you need to pay them a livable wage. Whether they're here legally or not is the problem. And Jay says, never seen anything here without someone in the equipment. Illinois farms in my area, many are corporate. Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to have to, maybe I can get a farmer to come on and talk to us about some of this new AI type operated farming equipment, because there you can go online and find the videos, but it is really interesting, and it's kind of, back when I was on, I don't remember which show, maybe it was Real Talk, where we had somebody from the Farm Bureau come on, once, I don't know if it was once a week, every other week, and talk to us. I love talking about farms and farming with some of these people. And one of the topics we would talk about is all of the technology changes in farming, and how farmers, unfortunately, this is a downside, how they are almost being forced to spend millions of dollars on all of this new technology. And at the same time that they're being forced, and the reason why they're being forced to use some of this new technology is because of all of these, Green New Deal rules, which of course Trump is canceling out, that they have to buy all this new equipment. Otherwise, they don't comply to these, these green rules to save our world from the cows, which we're going to talk about meat, by the way, also before the show ends. And part of the problem that they had, and we used to talk to the Farm Bureau about this, is that this machinery needs an internet signal. It doesn't operate without the internet. It has to have Wi-Fi. And so a lot of these rural areas do not have the best Wi-Fi. And I know that in Missouri, at least, when we talked to the Farm Bureau about this, Garrett, I can't remember Garrett's last name right now, but Garrett was the name. He was the president of the Missouri Farm Bureau. He would talk to us about how they're working on this new plan to bring internet all across the rural areas so that the farmers have easier access and they can operate the equipment that they're required to operate. So, story for another day, but we will definitely have to talk about that because I think it's absolutely fascinating. Mary says, the farm workers I know are all legal, 9-month worker visa. And let's see here. And Tammy says they row crop, not raising vegetables and such, different equipments. And Tammy, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I don't know a lot about farming. I wish I did. My family, my dad's family, they grew up out near Piedmont, Missouri, in a town called Mill Spring. And my great grandfather owned the mill there, and they had a 600-acre farm and every animal you can imagine. And they didn't do a ton of farming, but they did, some farming and that type of thing. And I think it's fascinating. And, we know that Democrats, they would like to attack farming and farmers and do everything they can to harm, people who want to be self-reliant. And it's really a shame. My book, Our Farmers Are Number One. Well, I should say it's a close call between farmers and our first responders, right? We need them all to survive. But anyway, I will, let's see, Jay says they have used GPS and satellite in tractors and combines for years. They do self-drive after their field is mapped to maximize ground usage. That's good information. I had no idea. And Linda says she has friends who grew up dirt poor. They are citizens. Her dad worked for a farmer and they had a big family. We are all retirement age. I love hearing about the farms. And so I want to move on to the MLK, JFK, RFK. We're going to spend plenty of time on the show talking about farming, trust me. And so we'll be getting back to all of that in the coming days, no question about it. Because, eventually things are going to die down. There's always going to be news with Trump, of course, being our president, but eventually things are going to die down a little bit. And we're going to talk more about what is referred to as meow milk, raw milk that, of course, farmers aren't supposed to sell. And they sometimes call it meow milk or cat milk or something like that, pet milk, so that you can buy it legally without them getting into trouble. I'm actually looking for some right now, if you know anybody that has any. And Pam says, look at our government going after the Amish for producing raw milk. That's exactly right, Pam, and you and I are thinking the same today. That's exactly right. I don't understand it, and I hope it's something that Trump stops, because we should have the ability to purchase raw milk. If I am looking for some right now because I want to make butters, some different flavored butters. I've already ordered my butter molds, and I've made butter already, but from regular milk or my regular cream, I should say, and it's not the same. You really need your good cultured cream fresh from the dairy. So we'll be getting into that a lot more as the show moves on too in the coming days and weeks. But I want to go back to Donald Trump declassifying the files on MLK, JFK, RFK, because that's a historical moment. But what are we really going to gain from it? As I said yesterday, I have a hard time believing that there's really a lot in there that we don't already know. There might be validation of what we already know. Now, so far, I've been really looking. So far, I've only come across one person. I don't even know where to find these files. It's probably too soon to find them yet. If any of you guys have seen them, please let me know, and because I would really like to know. And from what I see, and what I've heard, the couple people who have looked at the file say it's almost all redacted. So I don't know if that's true because I haven't seen it for myself, and I hope to see it for myself. But if it's all redacted, then what difference does it make to declassify information? And how I kind of feel is that if our government wants to hide something, they're going to hide it. They're not long before, Donald Trump sat in that chair and talked about declassifying these files. Well, guess what? It was Biden sitting in the chair. And they could have easily gone into the files, taken out what they wanted, shredded information, deleted information, redacted information. I would really like to know what's in there. Now, MLK, his family said they want to see his file first before the public can see it. They want to see everything that's in it. And I hope that they see what they're looking for. I really do. I hope all of the families get answers. And I do hope that whatever was redacted, is added back in, because how can you be transparent and say, okay, we're going to declassify the files and allow you to see what's in there, and then, oh, but it's all redacted. Here's the letter, but you can't see a darn thing on there. So I hope that that's not the case. Jay says not released yet. They have some time before they are required to be available. That's what I was kind of thinking, Jay. So the people who have seen them, I'm not sure how exactly they have seen them, but I am very curious what we're going to find in those files. And it is groundbreaking for Trump to do this. I mean, how many years have we talked about this? Now, there's a lot of other files I would like to see. Obviously, I would like to see the files on UFOs, UAPs, alien technology. I'd like to find out what happened to Jimmy Hoffa, wouldn't you? And his family, of course, being in the St. Louis area as well. And Robert says, I expect the LBJ admin and CIA at the time took care of it all. Well, of course they did. That information, anything really good is not going to be in those files. Come on now. Oh, Robert, yes, you mentioned that earlier, the 9/11 files, but it's the same thing. Can you really think that you can open up a computer file or open up a paper file and, oh, there it is right there in the file, the US government planned 9/11? I mean, that's not going to be there. I mean, these people are not, they're going to cover their crimes, aren't they? Aren't they going to cover their crimes? Even though back in the day, let's say just JFK as an example, I think we all think something more nefarious, took place there. But let's just say if it did, do you really think that information is still there? There's people who know, and unfortunately, most of those people who knew the truth are gone now. And they've probably told other people. There's been people who've come forward who say, I know exactly what happened. And nobody believes them because it's not official. It's not validated. We haven't seen it in a file. I just hate to be the bearer of, ill news, bad news, but I just don't think there's going to be a lot to see in these files. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we learn everything, and everything we've always thought was validated, but I don't see it happening. And Allison, it's a government document that says it all. Monica, new movie coming with all of this. There probably a lot of movies are going to spin out of what's going on right now with Donald Trump and all of these files being released. And let's see, Jay Van Brown. Jimmy Hoffa was born near me in Brazil, Indiana. I think he was related to someone in my distant family. That's really neat. Jimmy Hoffa's family, some of them live here in St. Louis. His daughter actually is a judge in St. Louis, in St. Louis County, or I think or maybe it's in Clayton. I can't remember, but she presided over a case. I talked to you guys a day or so ago about my brothers, maybe it was yesterday, getting in trouble way back in the day. Well, she was the judge. She threw the case out because the police entered our home without a search warrant. And so it was pretty interesting, but she did a really good job over that case. Her name is Barbara Ann Crancer, and that's Jimmy Hoffa's daughter. And so let's see. Joe Fry, I've heard nothing is ever totally erased from the internet. That's true, but, they can choose what they put in the internet. And let's see here. Allison, Colonel Joe Adams can tell you about Jimmy Hoffa, I bet. Colonel Adams probably knows. Good morning, Brent. And so, a lot going on with those files. There's going to be so much more information released. I can't wait to hear it all. There's going to be a lot of craziness that's going on, and it'll be very interesting. A couple more things. I know we're kind of running close to our time limit, so I want to throw some other things out there. My computer's acting a little crazy. Some of the things I want to touch base on before we head out. One is the planetary alignment. A lot going on there. And, I was going to talk about, well, let me throw these out there first. Zuckerberg, I don't know how much you guys trust Mark Zuckerberg. He threw a private party for Republican billionaires. Now, That probably doesn't surprise you. He probably goes where the money goes. And I'm still not sure if I trust Mark Zuckerberg. I just cannot wrap my head around him. And he told Tucker Carlson that he was a 70s type of liberal, and that he's all in tune with Trump and what Trump wants. And, he really was against government censorship. And I don't believe any of that. I don't believe any of that. Mary says, yes, that's her. She's a retired judge now. Yes, she's a fantastic judge, Mary. And Colonel Joe Adams, I know exactly what happened to Jimmy Hoffa. Well, Colonel Adams, we'll have to talk about that next week because I'm interested to know, because I don't know. I heard that he's in Lake Tahoe. I don't know if that's true. We'll have to get to that. And, tomorrow, or not tomorrow, sorry, next week, we'll talk about the 14th Amendment. We don't have to talk about that today. We've talked a lot about deportation and that type of thing already. Whether or not Trump is violating the Constitution, because the 14th Amendment, of course, ending birthright citizenship. We'll get to that on Monday. We don't have to talk about that today. And Karen says, good morning, Karen. I don't trust him. I don't trust him either, Karen. I don't trust anything at all that Mark Zuckerberg does. I don't believe anything he says. I don't trust anything he does. And he has a new look, by the way. I'll have to post that later on. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I don't know if he's had some work done or what the guy is doing, but he has a new look to go along with his new Republican image, which I think is kind of interesting. But of course, he's sucking up to all the Republican billionaires. Why wouldn't he, right? I'll tell you what, though, in his defense, I haven't been censored recently on Facebook. So that's a good thing. I haven't gotten any dings. I haven't had any posts removed. And I made a post the other day with like a week or two ago with all of the words that we haven't been able to say for the last so many years. And so far that post is still up. I haven't gotten in any trouble at all. So maybe we're seeing a new side. But, it could also be because Donald Trump literally told Mark Zuckerberg, if you do that again, if you censor people again, you will spend the rest of your life in prison. I'm sure that kind of woke him up just a little bit. Mary says he just wants to protect his money. Of course he does. Of course he just wants to protect his money. So I'm going to jump into planetary alignment very quickly, because if you have a camera, if you have a telescope, if you have any viewing type equipment, now is the time. All of the planets are going to be lined up. It's happening between tonight, tomorrow night, completely lined up, every last one of them. And I don't know, I didn't look it up how often that happens. It's not that often. And it's going to be a fascinating sight. But more than anything, besides it being an interesting thing to look at, how does it affect you? How does it affect your body? How does it affect the planet? That's a whole other story. And then I'm going to jump into that. I want to talk about the warning labels. They're potentially going to start placing on meat, because of course meat is the bad guy these days. And I'm going to talk about Apeel, and then I'm going to touch base very quickly on what you should be doing in your gardening. Jay says, this is how Facebook used to be before all the nonsense began. Right. Pam says, I watched Rogan and Zuckerberg. Lame. I did not watch it. It's like, I just can't handle it. I can't bring myself to do it. So, okay, I'm gonna throw this out here. I want you to watch this little quick video of this guy talking. I have no idea who this guy is, but I really liked his little video talking about the planets lining up. So I'm gonna play this here for
January
you very
25th.
quickly.
This is going to be one of the most massive timeline shifts you have ever felt. It is affecting all of us collectively. We're having one tomorrow within the 20th, but the one on the 25th aligns all the planets together. The energy is going to be off the charts, my friend. This is the time for you truly to manifest your dream life, to get into that frequency and go all in for yourself. I cannot express to you how important it's going to be, how magical it's going to be.
I think I have no idea who that guy is, but I think it's fascinating. And Monica, to your comment, from what I understand, it's going to be very visible. You can simply walk out into your yard. Hopefully it'll be a nice clear night and you can just look up and see it. I don't think there's anything, any particular spot, it's just going to be right across the middle of the sky. From what I understand, again, I don't know, but that's what I'm told. But the planets. I used to joke all the time. I still do when things are going really crazy in my life. Like if I'm having a bad day or a series of bad days, or I always say, oh, it's the planetary alignment because it affects us and how we feel and how we behave and everything around us. Just like it's true when there's a full moon, it absolutely does affect you. You talk to any police officer or EMT or person in emergency room, a lot of them will say, oh, yeah, if it's a full moon, we definitely know. We have more calls, more crazy situations, more people coming in. And when the planets line up, think about what it does to the weather, how it affects the tides, how it affects our, magnetosphere, our stratosphere. There's a lot of people who say, I am no expert in any of these things, just something that I try to research as much as I can. And there are a lot of people who say that, there's a lot of earthquakes that occur when the planets line up. Now, a lot of people believe that we've had this uptick in earthquakes and the issues we've been having with our magnetosphere, that it's very unstable, the poles are shifting, and it all has to do with these planets starting to line up. Now, is that true? Is it not true? I don't know. We just have to do more research on that. But there's a lot of people who do believe it is true. And I thought it was kind of interesting that, they said, they being, different folks, experts online, that remember when we had the New Madrid earthquake back in 1811, 1812? In that range, there were several, very large earthquakes. Well, the anniversary was, yes, I believe it was yesterday or the day before. I planned on talking about it, never did. And they said that the same thing back then, that the planets lined up. I don't know if it was all of them, but there was a large planetary alignment during those days. And they also had a very severe freezing spell where they were having these frost quakes and other things that we've been experiencing, now. And we know there, anyone who studies our magnetosphere is talking right now about the polar shift that's taking place. And our poles do shift, of course, and they do reverse and, do some other things. And a lot of people say our magnetosphere is very unstable right now. Some people even think, and now this is really digging deep and going down the rabbit hole, that the reason why we were seeing all those orbs, which a lot of people, including myself, believe are plasmoids, why we were seeing all of these what do you call it? The drones were investigating the plasmoids all around the world. And the plasmoids are caused by the magnetosphere being so unstable. And it makes sense to me if you go in deep dive and look at that theory. But either way, whether you think the planetary alignment affects you or the weather or our gravity or magnetosphere, it's still going to be really beautiful. It's going to be really interesting to see that you can look up and see all of that. And let's see here. Robert says, I agree. We are water-based internal tides going on. Tammy says, let's see, you talking about a daycare. I must have missed something with that. Manny says, my mom has Alzheimer's and full moons definitely affect her. Yes, my stepfather has, something going on, and I know he's been very affected this week by something. What that is, I don't know. Robert says, I think it's true. Magnetic forces from planets and the sun even depends on where in their elliptical pattern they are in. Jay says, polar shifts are nothing new. No, polar shifts are absolutely nothing new, but they can wreak havoc on our planet in a lot of different ways. But, if you go online and you go and you do some deep diving and do some research, there's a lot of people reporting right now. They're seeing a lot of methane coming up, out of the ocean floor, which is, I haven't had time to really look into this. I don't know what's going on with that. I saw somebody posting a video in the Gulf of America they kept saying, well, what is that? What is that? That looks really crazy. And of course, I know it's methane. They didn't know what was going on at the time. And I've seen these videos from around the world just over the past couple of days where they're having all this methane. We know there's an uptick right now in volcanic activity, that has been leading up to this point. Now, we know that we're having a lot of crazy weather, which could be weather manipulation, of course, on the government's part, but it could also very much be the planetary alignment. It could be things going on with our magnetosphere that are causing these severe weather issues also. It's not always Billy Gates. Sometimes it actually is Mother Nature. So something to think about. Monica, yes, of course, it is the Gulf of America. I can't wait to visit the Gulf of America soon. And so, yeah, so we'll take a look at the planetary alignment. I think it's going to be really fantastic. And, more than anything, do your research, look around. I think it's interesting to know, is the planetary alignment causing this uptick in volcanic activity? Is it potentially responsible for some of the weather events that we're seeing, for the uptick in earthquakes that we're seeing? It's all very fascinating to me, but maybe it's just me. And Robert says, methane's from the oceans causing the Bermuda Triangle disasters. Yes, I believe that, because if you read some of the stories about the Bermuda Triangle and some of the issues they face, it was always this bubbling, boiling water, which now we know is methane opening up through crevices in the ocean bottom. So that's something to think about. And so much other stuff to talk about. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to jump into this. Apeel. You guys all know about Apeel, right? Well, let's talk about meat first. Some of the things going around in the media, that they want to label meat like they do cigarettes with a warning. Now, let's hope Donald Trump stops this. We can stop it in the United States. Can we stop it across the world? We cannot.
There's a study which has found that if on meat you put a cigarette-style warning, so a picture of rotting liver or the perforated lung or whatever it happens to be, the way you have in cigarettes, it could help reduce the amount of meat consumed and save the environment.
Processed meat is indeed carcinogenic due to added ingredients such as nitrates, but some eco-activists are calling for warning labels for all forms of meat, with arguments ranging from animal cruelty to saving the planet. So what exactly is the argument, and is this a sensible thing to do? Margarita Sachkova is from the animal rights group PETA and backs putting these kinds of labels onto meat.
I absolutely support this initiative. And, we know that, such labels on cigarettes, they really prevent people from smoking, as they have access to information about all the damage that smoking causes to their health. So it makes sense to add similar labels to meat, because people deserve to have this information, and consumers can just make very informed choices, whether they are buying something that is potentially giving them risks to their health. And we all know that meat is linked to cancer, to diabetes, to heart disease. And essentially, we are all adults here. We are talking to consumers who deserve to know that also meat has impact on our environment.
But you're attacking the wrong people, aren't you, really? You're attacking farmers in Lincolnshire and Aberdeen and Coleraine and whatever, where actually they're not big enough to constitute much of a problem in methane and whatever. You're killing an industry. The Irish beef industry, for instance, and dairy industry is being killed the way it is in Holland as well, because of protests from people like yourself.
Crazy. I've been reading some of your comments. Yes, PETA is a joke. Also true. Robert, more money for pharma. Yes, absolutely. And yes, Allison, buy your meat from a local farmer. As a matter of fact, go on a group. Just in my area this week, somebody posted, hey, anyone want to go in and buy a cow with me? All you need to do is $1,000 to buy 1/4 of this cow. And I actually thought about messaging the guy and be like, I'll do it. I really did think about it. And I may still do that, down the road here soon. But go to your farmer. Just go to your farmer. These people have lost their minds. They have lost their minds. It's crazy. I don't even know what it is they're thinking. Joe says meat heals the body and the mind. That's why they want to ban it. I know hundreds who have beat type 2 diabetes eating keto carnivore. Absolutely true. Allison says there's many, I'm assuming you mean farmers, in Franklin County, Missouri. And Jay says, if you're a Bible believer, meat is something God gave us for food. No question about it. Our bodies were designed to eat meat. They're designed to eat meat. And it's unfortunate that a lot of our commercial meat, we just can't trust it anymore. If you guys know me and you listen to the show enough, I trust very little of anything. And I specifically don't trust our food. I don't trust what they're doing to our food. And, I'm not coming after the farmers, but we know that there are the three biggest meat producers are all owned by the same people. There's a big name in pork, big name in poultry, big name in beef. And not too long ago, I reported on this on a show, I think maybe on Cancel This, a couple years ago, where is a group of ranchers that came together And I think it was in Montana where they were having hundreds of acres and they were going to, or thousands of acres, raise their own cattle and sell them for a more reasonable price. And they were going to make sure that they didn't have hormones or, antibiotics and all of this other stuff. They weren't going to give them any of these ridiculous mRNA vaccines because sadly, if you're going down to your local grocery store, you're probably eating meat that has been vaccinated. You may have done your best to not get a COVID vaccine, but guess what? You're going to go and purchase meat that has been vaccinated with the same thing you tried your best to avoid. And, they're coming after meat. Billy Gates right at the center of that one. And they're all saying, oh gosh, cows produce so much methane. And of course, now with the birds, they all have avian flu. Avian flu, by the way, now in Illinois, pretty widespread from what I hear. Where was it just yesterday? Was it New York State? I can't recall, where they had to cull 100,000 ducks, over avian flu. We knew here in the United States, they just ordered, what was it, $590 million worth of avian flu vaccines. I mean, come on. They're coming at us hard with our food, and I don't trust any of it. I don't trust any of it. When I go to the grocery store, it's so sad to say, I almost feel like it's a mental illness on my part, but I go to the grocery store and I'm looking at the produce, which should be your healthiest part of the grocery store. Your produce, your eggs, and your dairy, right? Remember when they used to tell you when you go to the grocery store, do that loop around the store, but never go down the aisles in the middle. Go through the produce, the dairy, and, make your way out of the store. But now I don't trust those aisles. I go into the produce and I look at everything and I think, this looks like real food, but most of this is not real food. Most of it's GMO. It's got chemicals on it. I go down the meat aisle and the meat, it's like, okay, who knows what's in here? It's not supposed to be red like this. It's a lot of them is pumped in with dye. We know they pump saline into chickens to make them look plumper. You have no idea what these animals are eating or if they have disease or anything else. And it's sad that to have to feel that way, that our food is poison to our bodies, but it is. It really is. And the only way to combat that is to find a local farmer, go to your local farmer and purchase your food. If you can't grow it yourself, if you can't raise it yourself, please find a local farmer. I promise you, there is one in every area. I don't know where Tammy lives, but she said her family, they're farmers and row farmers and, visit them, find people like them. We need to find more networking sources for farmers. And Pam says that is one of the largest concerns. We ate vaccinated meat. Yeah, we've all eaten vaccinated meat at this point. We all have. How that affects our bodies, I don't know. But unless you're raising your own meat, whether you're buying it from a farmer who doesn't use vaccinations, good for you. But if you're not, you've eaten vaccinated meat and you've eaten diseased meat. You've eaten meat, from animals that have cancer and other diseases. So keep that in mind. It's a sad reality, but it's true. And Jay Van Brown says, lots of independent meat lockers around me. A friend of mine grows freezer beef cows. I help them pick corn with my antique tractor corn picker for their feed this last October. Well, I think that is absolutely fantastic. And we have to do more of those types of things. And then Robert says, you can thank BlackRock and venture capital for destroying the private sector in all fields. Coming to a hairdresser and HVAC local company, if not already very soon. Corporations run the world. And man, we've got to change that. And speaking about produce, I apologize. I've got to turn my sound off here. Some friends of mine are all in a pool for Super Bowl. They're all ordering their squares. My phone is like ding, 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 ding. Sorry about that. And so I want to talk about Apeel really quick before I talk to you about your garden. And I'm going to tell you, week by week, what you should be doing in your garden right now, according to when your first frost, or last frost, I should say, begins. And let's see here. So I'm going to give you this quick news clip here. It's about 2 minutes long, talking about Apeel. And
PSA for anyone going to the grocery store. Yes, even natural health food stores. Next time you're in the produce aisle, please be on the lookout for this label. And whatever you do, do not go near it. Apeel, or Apeel, is a World Economic Forum and Bill Gates funded product that is being sprayed on fruits and vegetables, which are on the verge of spoiling, so that they appear fresh and last longer. Even more frightening is the fact that Apeel has been approved for use on USDA organic produce under the name Apeel. The main ingredient found in the Apeel coating is mono and diglycerides, which are extracted from grapeseed oil. This is then processed with the use of two solvents, which are ethyl acetate and heptane, both of which are hazardous chemicals known to seriously damage internal organs in the case of repeated exposure. This coating cannot be washed off. Additionally, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer, or IARC, recognized glycidol, another name for these same ingredients, as, quote, probably carcinogenic to humans. So why are they spraying this literal poison on our food? One thing is for certain. Apeel should be kept far, far away from our food supply. The ability of this $2 billion Bill Gates-backed startup to just quietly slip in to extend the life of food with absolutely zero proof of preserving any nutritional value should remind every American of the importance of eating organic, local, and chemical-free food. But if the evidence here isn't enough to convince you, take a look at what Apeel allegedly does to the food itself.
When she opens it and she breaks it in half, it gets very tough and doesn't really break. And when it pulls, it's like it's glue.
Like, it's not even breaking, like, at all. Like, it, and I know you guys can't feel the texture, Avi, right, because of the video, but, like, it literally feels fake.
Is it clear yet? The tyrannical globalists will stop at nothing to completely railroad anyone trying to live a wholesome, healthy life. They'll do.
It is pretty clear to me, and I hope it's clear to you also. And by the way, I love OAN News. They're one of my favorites. I don't watch the news, but if I had to watch the news, it would definitely be OAN. And I'll tell you, we've all seen those videos circulating around social media where they're again, bending food, in parentheses, food, come on, really? And they're bending it. It's like rubber. We've seen these videos of the avocados and the bananas and a lot of other food that definitely does not resemble food. Can you imagine eating a rubber banana? I mean, they want to tell us that cows are bad. Cows are so bad. We need cricket flour, and we need to start eating bugs and worms. Remember when Nicole Kidman did that video, a promo for bug eating, and she's sitting in a chair and she had this large selection of different types of bugs and worms. And she sat there and ate one from each pile. It was absolutely disgusting. And that's what they want us to do. Of course, they call that the alternative protein. And then they say, oh, seed oils are so bad. But yet, gee, let's spray seed oils all over our rotting fruits and vegetables so that they'll last a little bit longer, and so people can eat them. Like I said yesterday, they're killing us with this food. They're killing us. It's not even food. When you go to the grocery store, that's not food you're looking at. It's not food you're looking at. What you're looking at is a scientific experiment, quite honestly. That's what it is. So it's just a scientific experiment. Jay says the FDA is our supposed agriculture police agency, except they are funded and ran by the very people who benefit from these companies. Jay, you've got the comment of the day with that one. 100% true. And I hope, just like Donald Trump got rid of the WHO, I hope he also gets rid of the FDA, because I'll tell you what, we've got better things we can do. We don't need the FDA. We can do it ourselves in a far better way. Jay says, everyone knows McDonald's fries don't degrade, yet millions still eat them, and we are complicit in this. Yeah, I know. Remember when Burger King had that campaign where they showed their hamburger rotting and molding, and they said, well, gee, compare this to McDonald's. My hamburger's rotted and molded over here at Burger King, and McDonald's will literally live forever. And I'm going to practice this. I just saw the commercial, or not a commercial, but a video of it yesterday, where there's a certain popsicle out there where people are saying, well, if you take this popsicle and leave it out, it will never melt. And I watched a video of a guy taking these popsicles and putting them in the microwave for, I think a minute, and they never melted. He left them on the counter for a day. They never melted. But, I don't believe it until I do it myself. And on social media. One of the highest uh, number of views I've had on any video I've ever posted was this last summer when I took a drumstick and I placed it outside on the patio. I have a pillar on the back patio, and I placed it very hot summer day, and I left it there. And now it did melt, but it more congealed, if that makes sense. It never really lost its shape until I started messing with it. And then it was just a big congealed mess. It was not ice cream, how a natural ice cream would melt. I'm going to do that again this summer, but I'm going to find these popsicles and see what works, because I'll tell you, this stuff that we're seeing in the grocery stores, that's not food. I don't know what we're going to do. There's no easy answer for it, because if you went through your refrigerator right now and you went through your cabinets, I bet you'd find very little food. Now, not all of you, but some of you, I bet you'd find very little food, and that's myself included. And so, I don't know about you guys, but I am changing that. That's all we can do, is we can change it. You can't necessarily change it overnight, but you can change that. And Joe says they have a new GMO tomato that never goes bad, which is just terrifying to me. Now, when I planted my garden last year, it was not successful by any means at all. Now, but that was operator error. That was my fault. I don't have a lot of time. I should have been more careful in my planting. And then I left to go to Georgia, right in the middle of getting ready to harvest much of my garden. So that didn't help. I didn't stake my tomatoes up correctly. There's a lot of things I did wrong. Well, this year I am not making the same mistakes as I did last season. I'm not going to make those mistakes. My food that I'm growing in my garden, the nuts I bear from my trees, the nut harvest that I get, I still have hundreds of pounds of pecans left, from my pecan tree. And then, I also have planted some fruit trees. I'm going to plant a lot more fruit trees. But being that this is new to me and I don't always know what I'm doing, I am going to be every single week, I'm going to be checking in on myself, and I'm just going to share these little ideas with you just in case you're in the same position I am. I need a guide. Quite honestly, I need guidance for my garden. I need somebody to tell me what to do. That, okay, it's this many weeks out till your last frost. This is what you should be doing this week. That is the only way I'm going to be able to control my garden, because I don't know. I've not gardened my whole life. I've gardened. I've always had tomatoes and maybe some green peppers, maybe some hot peppers, and that's pretty much it. I've never ventured into other things. And when I tried, it didn't grow, and I gave up. But I never really tried that hard. But now's a different story. I'm in a panic mode. I don't trust the food the government's selling us. Yes, I can go to farmers markets, but I prefer to grow my own food. So I'm going to be following a guide. So I'm just going to be sharing that guide with you on Friday. So you'll know what I'm doing. And if you're following along and you're also a first-time gardener or a beginner gardener, or maybe even an experienced gardener, and you've just not really fine-tuned how you're supposed to do things, I'm going to make sure I share these tips with you, because this is how I'm going to be gardening this year. I've got a lot to combat. I'll tell you, I've got a lot of things to get ready. This year, I want to make sure I tie up my tomatoes really well. I did not do a good job of that at all last year. I'm going to buy trellises, which is something I also never got around to do. I'm going to buy some cattle panels. I never even got around to planting my cucumbers last year. So I'm going to do that this year. And I did allow zucchini to take over my garden and pumpkins to take over the garden. The pumpkins and the zucchini in the end were the only things that really were successful. I did have a lot of good tomatoes, but I'm telling you, I seriously planted well over 1,000 plants, and my corn didn't work out very well. Something kept eating the corn before it grew and pulling it out of the ground. So lots of things I need to tackle this year. And let's see, Jay says, I like snacking on black walnuts. I have a ton of black walnut trees. And, every single season I collect the black walnuts, but it's me getting around and taking the time to actually crack open the black walnuts and doing something with them is a whole nother story. But if you have black walnut trees, there's a lot you can do with them. From the peels, you can make dyes. You can use them as an astringent. There's a lot of uses for black walnut. Pam says, begin garden season 3 here, starting my arrow garden this coming week. I told you guys that I, found a garden It's not a garden, a growing kit. I'm gonna have to show you guys what that is. A growing kit. Well, we got it picked up yesterday. And so I'm gonna start putting that together to kind of get a head start on a couple of different things. Mostly flowers, but some also vegetables and fruits. And let's see. Joe says my best garden was when I hauled in some horse manure, added to my soil. My neighbors were amazed that my garden looked so much better than theirs. There's a guy here in town who told me he would bring in some manure for me to put in my garden. So I'm going to do that. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about that because I'm sitting in the dirt, standing in the dirt all the time. And I'm thinking, do I really want to sit in dirt with horse manure? But I will figure out a way around it because I need some nutrients for my garden. Again, powdery mildew was something I really faced a lot of different types of worms that got into my tomatoes. There's a lot to deal with. But, the tips that I'm going to be going over every week deal with all of these things, all of these things. So right now, if you're like me, this is what I'm doing right now this week is I'm going to be placing my seed orders. I've already inventoried. Last week, I inventoried all of the seeds that I already have. And there were some things that I planted a lot of seeds of that I want to plant more of. So if you haven't already inventoried your seeds, you should definitely be doing that now. We should be in that period where we're about 17, 18 weeks before the last frost. So right now, things are minimal. There's not a whole lot we can do right now. If you sow your seeds outdoors, that's something you want to do right now if you haven't started that already. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. And, last week I was talking about inventorying your seeds. So I've already done that. You want to inventory your seeds, get your seeds ordered. All of the seed companies, they all have different sales right now, different promotional types of things going on, depending where you want to order your seeds. I order from a lot of different places. I order some from, I think they call it the Alliance of Seed Starters or something like that. Then I have one that's like a Native American seed company I order from. I order from Baker Creek. I order from St. Clair. If you order from St. Clair, being CLARE, a portion of the proceeds go to pro-life groups. So that's something a little extra if you want to purchase your seeds from St. Clair. And I buy a lot of seeds at Rural King. There's a Rural King right down the road from me. And some of my best producing vegetables last year came from my Rural King seeds because I marked everything down. So even though at one point I kind of got some things mixed up, I dropped a big tray, my greenhouse blew over. And so everything fell on the ground. I just had to pick it back up and put it in pots, and all the little name tags fell out. But some things I was still able to trace. And Dottie says, chicken manure is great. Just have to be careful not to overdo it because it can burn. I did not know that. Well, gosh knows I got enough chicken manure around here to last. Now, if you plant asparagus, last year I bought asparagus crowns, and I'm such a sad gardener, and I'm even embarrassed to admit this. I never planted them. I put them in my greenhouse in a bag, and I just never got around to planting them. I need to go out and check. They're probably not even good anymore. So I'm going to order my asparagus crowns today. So that's step number 2 you should be doing. Third thing, if you do want to plant parsley and thyme, I don't care as much about parsley. Thyme is big on my list. You'll want to start sowing your seeds now indoors for parsley and thyme. Broccoli, mung bean, alfalfa sprouts. If you're a sprout eater, you can start growing your sprouts indoors now. That's something that you can do. And this is something else I'm going to do. Leeks, sweet onions. You can sow your seeds indoors right now for transplanting. And last year, I got a really late start on my onions. I'm not going to do that again this year. I've got a ton of onion seeds. And so last year I had onion seeds that I started. I ended up killing them. I did that with a lot of things. And then I ended up buying some onions that were already, I don't know what the proper term for it is, onion starters, I guess you could call them that. And I never got around to planting them. And I spent so much money on this stuff, and I just never got around to planting them. So I'm going to work this weekend on getting my onion seeds started so that they'll be ready to transplant outdoors. So if you're 17 to 18 weeks outside of your last day of frost, like I am, these are the things you should be doing. Getting your seed orders, getting your onions started, getting your asparagus crowns ordered. If you want to grow some parsley and thyme, you're going to start sowing those seeds. If you want to sow seeds outdoors, which I am going to do, but I haven't done it yet. That's something else I'm going to work on this weekend. Make sure you start that right away so that you can get them outside while it's still cold. We're in this crazy cold pattern right now, but that's probably going to change soon. Hopefully. Jay says onions are usually super easy. You know, my onion seeds grew really, really well. I have a really nice setup. I have some heating pads and I have growth lights. I have all these different things to start seeds indoors, but my seeds grew absolutely fantastically. What I didn't do is I just didn't have time to plant them, and I didn't have time to keep up with them. I was going in every day and misting my seeds, and everything was growing just absolutely fantastic. And then I just got super busy, and I didn't have time to plant them out in the garden, so they all died. I hate to admit to that huge failure, but it is what it is, and I'm going to be doing differently this year. Dottie says green and red peppers take up to 30 days to germinate. You know, excuse me, my peppers did pretty good, you know, but for whatever reason, and I don't understand why, is that my peppers turned out teeny tiny. I kid you not, you guys might remember last season when I showed you guys my peppers. They were about the size of a quarter. I have absolutely no idea what happened with my peppers. I planted many different varieties of peppers because I use peppers a lot in my cooking, whether, you know, it's, you know, yellow, red, green peppers, you know, different. I've got this new purple variety I'm going to plant, and I have no idea why, but my peppers were the tiniest little things. They were smaller. You know, I'm trying to think of what, they were like, I don't know, a quarter size. They were very tiny. And so tiny, I didn't even know what to do with them. And I don't know why they were so darn small, because they grew. They were great big plants. I transplanted them. They continued to grow all season. I got one pepper that was maybe half the size of what a green pepper should be. And it was stuck under a weed, and I accidentally stepped on it and squashed it. So that's how bad my garden went last year. It was not good. It was not good at all. And tomatoes are my favorite. Green beans are my favorite. I'm going to try to concentrate on the things that are my favorite. I planted a lot of cantaloupe, but for whatever reason, my cantaloupe got powdery mildew when it first started to sprout. It sprouted really well, as did my watermelon. But the powdery mildew took over, and it just destroyed my cantaloupe and my watermelon. It spread over to my tomatoes and hurt a lot of my tomatoes. My corn, I don't really know what happened to my corn. It didn't grow very big, and the animals pulled out a lot of it. And then what did grow was really not really corn. It was just like that fungus that you see people, they say that it's like a delicacy, but yet it's not a delicacy to me, so I don't want that. And Dave says mostly so you can get early tomatoes. Yeah, that's why I have this garden, and it's called a garden. But you set it up indoors. Where I'm gonna put this thing, I don't know. And it's a grow tent. It comes with lights. It has its own, you know, thermometer, and, you know, trying to think of the right word for that. It's climate controlled, and so therefore I can start a little bit early on some things. I'm mostly going to use it for flowers though, because I spent hundreds of dollars on flowers last year, hundreds of dollars. Because even though I planted a ton of flowers, when spring came around and everybody had out their big, pretty, beautiful flowers, mine were still little sprouts, just a little bit bigger than seedlings. And so I don't want to let that happen again. I want to make sure that I have flowers ready to go at the beginning. You know, it was too easy to go to a garden center and buy flowers that were already plants versus these little sprouts that I had growing. And Joe says there's an organic solutions to help fight powdery mildew. That's going to be my number one that I'm going to tackle is powdery mildew. And let's see here. And you're right, J.J. Brown. Sometimes life gets in the way, and it is hard to keep up. That was me. It was really hard to keep up. Pam says, if I can grow green beans, then anyone can. It was my best success. I'll tell you what, with my green beans, is that I planted them, and I marked them, and then the markers, for whatever reason, the markers fell out. And some of my markers, you know, I used permanent marker on them, but with rain and, you know, the outdoor elements, all the names were gone. So I had no idea what most of the stuff was that I planted. I had no idea. I learned how to tell the tomatoes apart by their leaves. So that part I was mostly fine with. But when it came to some of the other things, I had no idea. You know, then at the last minute, you know, as you guys, some of you know, I decided to go to Georgia, you know, to get the vote out for Donald Trump. And that was right when my green beans were finally taking hold. So I missed the entire green bean season. I came home they were still growing, and I'll be honest, I don't have the faintest clue when a green bean is ready to harvest. Now, I have since read that if you can see the beans, then it's too late. You know, you've got to harvest your green beans before you can see the beans bulging out. So I'm going to know a little bit more. I think it was Dottie, so the pepper plants can be cut back at the end of the season and taken indoors to plant the next year. Yeah, and I thought about doing that, but I didn't. And I've also read now where you can top off your green peppers. And I didn't know that. I don't know anything about topping off green peppers. So when your plant grows, you just cut the top off. And that allegedly gives you a bigger, stronger plant. So we'll see how that works. And Jane Van Brown says, I love cherry and grape tomatoes. You know, I do too. My problem is that I got my seeds mixed up. Whenever my planters fell down in the greenhouse, all my tomatoes got mixed up. And they were all, I just repotted them. I had no idea what was what. And I ended up planting way too many cherry tomatoes and grape tomatoes. And I had hundreds of them. There were so many of them, I stopped picking them. I'm like, I don't even have time to mess with these. And I think the beefsteak, one of the varieties of beefsteak was my favorite tomatoes. So I'm going to plant more of those this time. Jay says the audio is crackling. I'm sorry, Joe, because probably because I'm about 35 minutes over my time. So I'm going to be ending the show. I'm sure you guys all have better things to do. And it's Friday. I'm so happy that it's Friday. I have to work tomorrow for a couple of hours, but I'm going to be concentrating this weekend on my garden. And so we're going to be talking a lot about gardening, a lot about farmers, a lot about produce, a lot about healthy foods and healthy lifestyle and that type of thing in the weeks and months to come. And we're on the right track. We got the right man in the right place, and things are going to change in this country. And thankfully now we don't have to be on defense, all of the time. We can relax a little bit and get some other things done. And gardening is going to be my number one. And so this weekend I'm going to do exactly what I'm supposed to be doing according, to my guide. And that is I'm going to be ordering my seeds. I'm going to order extra seeds of the things I know I like the most. I'm going to concentrate my garden on the things I like the most instead of a bunch of weird junk that I planted last year that I couldn't keep up with. And then the other thing I'm going to be doing, I'm going to order my asparagus crowns. I am going to be sowing my thyme. I don't care about parsley, but I'm going to be doing my thyme. I'm going to work on sowing my outdoor seeds as well. So those are all some things that, if you guys have any tips, trust me, I am happy to hear about them. I'm happy to hear about them. Jay says, pinch off the new growth on the tomato at the bottom of the plant. My tomatoes actually did pretty good. If I would have tied them up better, they would have been better. Anyway, I do hope you guys all have a really fantastic weekend. Let me know your gardening tips. I would love to hear them. I know some of you have been gardening for many, many years, and I'm a beginner, so I've got a lot to learn. I do hope you guys have a good weekend. There's going to be a lot going on this weekend. Please be aware of the propaganda. Don't fall for that craziness when you hear people talking about deporting moms and dads and kids and all this other stuff. Right now, we are only deporting the most violent criminals in our country. So remind people of that when they start feeling bad and having empathy for some of these people, that if they're deporting someone, then that person is a murderer, a rapist, a pedophile, a gang member. Those are the only people being deported right now. So please keep that in mind. I hope you guys have a really good weekend. I will look forward to seeing you on Monday. Outside of that, I'll be seeing you around on social media. Have a good weekend, everybody.